All right. And any last questions before we get started? Great.
Just one.
Hmm.
Do we have time for a conversation scene before we arrive in London?
Absolutely. You will have this. Anything else?
Nope.
Okay. We open up again in London in early October of 1454. Cormac and Robert, you have just finished your meeting with the London Prince, Ambrose. He was clearly vexed and troubled by the revelation of these documents and letters, which have revealed both Jean-Marc and Gaetan's hands behind the merchants of the staple. You know you have somewhere between a few nights to maybe a week before Thomas and Elined are expected, and likely Prince Ragnar sometime after. And as you exit the Westminster Palace into the cool and windy streets of London, the two of you find a moment away from the crowds, from the others to regroup and to speak. The scene is yours.
Well, now I've done it. I've signed my death warrant. Cormac looks just as vexed as Ambrose did.
I'm not sure that your own life is the main concern, but what could potentially be caused by these two going at it if that case arises.
It's going to arise. Did you see the look on his face?
And we had best think about a way to fix this.
Fix it? There's no way to fix it. Not even Thomas and his damnable silver tongue could fix it.
In such a short time frame, perhaps not. But there still is the issue of what Ragna has spoken to with Ambrose.
I shouldn't have even mentioned her. We don't have enough proof yet.
And that is the problem. There is proof against my grandsire, though it is altered slightly.
I wonder how that must make you feel.
I am displeased it has come to this.
Displeased. Well, that's a word for it.
Yes, I am surprised you. I suppose fear overwhelmed your senses about what we spoke earlier.
You suppose that, do you?
That is my guess. We didn't have to mention anything at all about the investigation.
Well, thank you. That makes me feel a lot better.
And of course, I've gotten plenty of ire for what I've done.
I'm just not sure where to proceed from here.
We still have time before the others arrive. We try to find out what message was sent. Perhaps that can be a start.
And how are we going to do that?
By getting in contact with the Nosferatu.
If Helen didn't know what this message contained, how can we really be sure any others will?
Because Helen is not well regarded in their circle.
And how do you know that?
Why, she admitted to such... Oh, she is not well regarded, it seems, so we must find another. Now, I may have the one in mind, but getting in contact with them will be difficult without some other way.
Let's just go traipsing about the sewers, shall we?
That may be an option, if it will come to that.
It's not an option. Never mind.
It's not the preferable option. I'm not even sure if that's where they make their hideout here. But perhaps we can start at Elysium and see what others know. Just put out the word we're looking for the Nosferatu. I'm sure one will come.
Then I suppose let's do that. After we settle in at the manor.
Quite.
So Cormac is going to start heading towards the Chamberlain Manor.
Robert will come along too.
Alright. Two of you leave away from Westminster Abbey, or Palace, and towards the Chamberlain Manor, where you are greeted by guards and staff who recognize you, and you're let in soon enough. There are chambers that you've used before, and this seems not to have changed much in the few months that you've been gone. And you seem to have a place to haven for the coming day. And on that note, what all are your plans for the next few days in general?
Well, in the next few days, Robert does intend to hang around Elysium a bit. Speak with those willing to speak. See if he can get information on how to contact a Nosferatu. And of course, we'll also look out for the ones he's seen before.
Okay. And Cormac?
Cormac is going to tag along, if for no other reason than he doesn't want to be alone right now.
Alright.
He is looking over his shoulder frequently.
Then the two of you will be working on that over the next few nights. And we will transition as we catch up with the other two of the Gauntlet. Meanwhile, Cormac and Thomas, Elenid and Thomas, are on the road, making their way south. You've just left some of the towns west of Lincoln, your message delivered to Prince Jean-Marc, and you're told by messenger that it was received. And you think you have a few more nights before you reach London. And so one of these nights, your mercenary band, or retinue I should say, has set up camp for the night as they've been traveling through the day. And so men are gathered here and there around campfires, the carriages unloaded, and the two of you have a moment to discuss your plans before you enter London. The scene is yours.
Right, about one of the potential options you were bringing up back at the manor. Though, I believe we should enter the carriage to discuss it further.
Of course. Bit of privacy. I don't know these men well enough yet to wholly trust their tongues not to wag.
Of course. With that, Elenid will go and enter the carriage.
Tom will climb up into the coach.
Alright, the two of you make your way inside. Door closes behind you. It's fairly dim in here. There's only a bit of light coming through some of the cracks at the bottom of the floorboard. The lights outside, the fires. And you're alone.
She sits down, hands folded in her lap. You mentioned something about finding the rebels and utilizing them, did you?
It's a half-formed plan at the moment.
My mind has admittedly drifted there before, but that plan is one that I hoped that would be a last-case scenario.
If the cancer has grown so great that the host can no longer survive while it yet exists within the body.
I understand, and that is why it was considered in the first place.
It's an inexpert tool, but if it means saving England from the Covenant, I would much rather see the cancer that is the Covenant cut out.
Unfortunate as it may be. Keep the ones that are still useful and do away with the ones that have been corrupted.
As I said, the tool is inexpert. I don't know that we'd have an opportunity to save any of the Covenant princes. Never mind the useful one. It's rather a bit like trying to perform surgery with a catapult.
Indeed. And we know not the full extent of their ideals.
That's fair enough. I also worry that they are simply another pawn being used by whoever it is manipulating mercers, and whom I believe also sent Alfonso to plant that note and lead you and Cormac to Gaeton's ledger's notes.
Yes, that is a strong possibility as well.
one I'm hoping that Ambrose will entertain.
Hopefully. Though I am admittedly uncertain on how well it will go.
The alternative is inciting open The alternative is inciting open conflict between Lincoln and London. And I expect Ragnar will side with London, leaving Lincoln hemmed in.
Unfortunate. Do you have any plans on how to approach the Ragnar situation and all this, her army?
At present, she has no army, but if we make mention of her aggressive expansionist ambitions, something that is well documented and widely known, and we remind Ambrose that she has the ear of the Lord Protector of the realm, the Duke of York. And we also allude to her conflict with Barbaros. He may arrive at his own conclusions without us saying a word, expressly implying anything.
Fair enough.
He's a wise enough fellow. Go ahead.
Though you mentioned inciting the open rebellion would remove the covenant as it is present, there are other parties that might be interested in that as well.
I'd considered that. That's why I hadn't put much time into refining that particular plan. It's unwieldy.
And last we were in London, there was at least some sort of representative from, what did she call it again, a Camarilla? Not entirely certain how they'd react to the entire thing.
I expect they would see an opportunity to expand.
Yes, the question is, would they assist their allies, or would they take the opportunity to seize power?
The real question is, which is better? The evil you know, or the evil you don't?
At least with the one you know, you can adapt better to it. To some extent, at the very least.
To that end, I mean to deprive the rebels of some future recruits. Before she was carted off to her end, I had asked Amelia to befriend and lend an ear to the London neonates. Unfortunately, she met her end long before I could receive a full report of how successful that was. But with her eagerness to please and her positioning near Bella, I'm sure she was able to at least make close acquaintance of a few.
As we should hope, she was quite the talkative girl.
I mean, to offer my condolences for their loss, commiserate, and offer aid. A sympathetic ear. Something the rebels would also be doing to their own ends.
Though, if we're looking for someone to talk to others and gather information, I may have someone for that.
Someone in London.
No, someone traveling with us currently.
I don't know how Gertrude will get on.
Gertrude is a rather social individual.
Be that as it may, it's hard enough for Canaanites to trust one another, never mind trusting the ghoul of another dormant.
Of course. That was more of if a push comes to shove for needing information. The thought of embracing her has crossed my mind before.
Something to consider. But I'm not sure now is the best time.
Understandable.
I don't mean to tell you your own mind, of course. Simply where I stand on the matter.
Yes, there's a bit of chaos going around that could upset that. But it is a thought.
Is it odd that I've not had the urge to procreate as such?
No, I don't think as such. It's a matter of finding one who is deserving. If you have not found one that you see as such, then that is merely that.
I just hope the menfolk haven't gotten into any trouble on their own.
What? Cormac and Robert get into trouble? Well, I've never heard anything of the sort.
Thomas grins a bit wanly. No, quite so. It's usually me that's getting the rest of you into some form of trouble or another.
If I may, that was more towards the start of our adventures, not so much the current.
Have you forgotten so quickly about the Penine? Not that
She
I'm
grimaces a
complaining.
bit. No, I have not forgotten.
Not that I'm complaining, mind you, but it's still smart.
And to think, before all this, my record was nearly spotless.
There is no tactic for dealing with a cadre of angry lupine. Certainly nothing you're going to find in any book, anyway.
That is true enough. Though I was more referring to being an upstart and causing trouble.
Some of my favorite people are troublemakers.
That certainly explains why you and Cormac get along so well.
Equal parts idealist and pragmatist, just in different areas.
Yes, well. We shouldn't keep the men out there alone for too long, should we?
I do mean to set some expectations for when we arrive back in London. I should very much like Brandon to begin recruiting and training additional men.
That would be useful.
Especially given that their liege will eventually call them back to service. I'd hate to be left shorthanded.
Of course. Then go tend to your duties. That is the extent of what I wish to discuss.
It's no trouble. I'd rather be questioned than allowed to meander off on my own whims unchecked. If the mood strikes me, I may go off for a ride, scout the hillsides around us, just to make sure that we're alone out here. I'll let
Sorry, what was that? You cut off after I let you. I'll let you.
I said I'll let you know.
She seems uneased at the thought of getting on a horse. Yes. That. You have fun with that.
Thomas grins again, and he'll slide out of the carriage and go and rejoin the men to break the notion of recruiting in London to.
All right. So you depart, speaking to your men about your plans to recruit for more soldiers, which they seem okay about. At least Sergeant Brandon Carter is certainly willing to try and do. The other men are somewhat half-hearted about the idea. But in any case, the idea is accepted. And eventually camp is struck and you're back on the road, back in the direction of London. So we will fade there on the sight of this carriage, this group of soldiers heading further south. Meanwhile, Cormac and Robert, back in London, spend several nights in Elysium looking for connections to the Nosferatu, looking for ways to contact them, as clearly Helen is of not great help. Robert, you're not getting very much success. The neonates despise or greatly fear you, and Cormac, that applies to you simply because you are wearing the same ring and sharing his company. Very few people will talk to either of you. Bella will entertain you from time to time, but the neonates, they avoid you like the plague itself. But after several nights, Robert, you're walking along with Cormac, having left Elysium, another night of no success, of no one really knowing anything, no one really speaking to you very much. And as you're turning down one of these alleys on your way back to the manor, you see ahead of you, off in the distance, a man in a cloak and a hat, dark clad, who's watching you very intently. There's not much light on this street, not many torches, but you can see the silhouette of the man, and you can see the silhouette of his hand reaching up and beckoning you forward as he steps backwards into the shadows.
Robert will take this invitation and follow.
Cormac, looking around nervously, follows after as well.
You continue on away from the well-walked streets and the busyness of the kind behind you into this alleyway that seems somewhat impoverished. It smells poorly back here. The sanitation is not great in many parts of this town, but particularly bad down here. Wash basins and puddles of muck and other debris cover this alleyway. You make your way down this dark alleyway, and the man seems to be gone as you struggle to see. But eventually you do hear a voice from behind one of these large crates off to the side of this narrow and disgusting alley. You've been asking a lot of questions, trying to find us. I wonder to what end.
Information.
I could have guessed that, Lord DeVere. But what information?
A messenger came recently, just before us. I'm sure they bared a message containing the emblem of Prince Ragnar. Does it sound familiar?
You wish to know the contents of this letter.
That would be ideal. Failing that, perhaps just the messenger would do.
You hear a low chuckle and a shift in the shadows around the boxes. The messenger you will not be getting. What would you do with this information, I wonder?
That vastly depends on the information within.
Will you drag more neonates off into the night, Lord DeVere?
I would prefer not to, on the command of the prince.
And what of you, Gauntlet Lord de Courcy?
What of me?
What are you doing in this city, really?
So you haven't heard then? Perhaps you're not as good at finding information as we thought. Come on, Robert, we're wasting our time here. He can't help us.
You hear that low chuckle again. I know what you purport to be here for, but what are you doing? With this investigation, with these princes. What is the end, Gauntlet Lord Cormac de Courcy?
Nothing less than my own survival at this point.
Now that's something I can trust. And you see the shadow shift out from the boxes. It's still a little more than a silhouette, but what you can see is spindly and crouched. Survival. Knowing the contents of that letter from Ragna to Ambrose, that will aid in your survival more than this meeting you just had, just a few nights ago.
The more we know, the better prepared we can be. The princes of the Covenant are not all what they purport to be.
I would say that your increased information seems to have put you at increased risk.
That's a very subtle way of putting it. I would say my head is rather on the chopping block. We need to know who we can trust and who we cannot.
Don't we all? Ragna sent warning to Ambrose. Anticipation that one or several of the Gauntlet might seek to destabilize things, create tension between himself and other princes, specifically herself, perhaps as a kind of anticipation of her own betrayal.
Aha! No wonder he was so curious about what proof we had. And wait, you know about Ragna's future betrayal?
I speak of perhaps the betrayal she expects from the Gauntlet, though I am curious why she would expect that. Perhaps not all is well in York.
That I cannot say, but perhaps the rest of the Gauntlet can tell us more.
Yes.
I would not expect that you would find Ambrose to have much bitter taste for Ragna, despite appearances. She is quite the performer.
She at least seems to be of a likable sort.
I hope you use this information for your survival and for the good of England, as it is uncertain who still truly aims for this anymore.
I do thank you for providing us with this information, but you seek nothing in return.
Acknowledgement. There may come a night when I beckon you into an alley and ask something of you instead. And I hope that you acknowledge this gift I have brought you.
Of course. And do you wish to leave us a name?
You get no response, and as you focus your eyes trying to study, looking for that silhouette again, you don't see anything.
Ragna is ever cautious.
If she is planning what we think she's planning, then this is a bold move. And well played.
And has worked in her favor.
I fear I might have put all of us in danger, Robert, and I'm sorry for that.
I guess we'll have to sort it out or die. I myself prefer to live.
As do I. Perhaps we should lie low for a few more days until the others arrive. See if they have any ideas.
At the moment, I can think of precious little we can achieve. Perhaps it is time to lay low, plan.
Very sensible of you. Let's make it back with haste.
Let's.
Alright. Two of you exit this disgusting alley, returning to the streets and back, continuing on the way you were going, towards the manor. And just as you're arriving, you see a familiar sight. A carriage with a group of men is just now reaching the front gate of the Chamberlain Manor this evening. It appears to be Tom and Elenid. And the group of you seem to be arriving all at the front about the same time.
Ah, your trip's over already.
None too soon.
Quite. We have things to discuss.
Next time, you two can take the overland route, and I'll stick to the sea.
We may have to take you up on that offer, if we do indeed get another chance, that is.
Not here. Inside.
You two are speaking in such a grave manner.
The news is grave.
Robert will just motion towards the manor.
Tom will let Brandon know that accommodations will be arranged for them shortly, and lead the way in.
He nods from horseback and turns back to organize the other men behind him. Meanwhile, you are led in, of course. Your carriage is brought in, the horse is stabled, and your belongings are slowly but surely being unpacked and brought into the manor by your staff. As the group of you make your way inside to the study.
Before he sets down, Thomas will give directions to Kasim to accommodate the men, their horses, make room in the staff quarters, whatnot.
He nods, very serious-faced, and bows sharply at the waist, as he is wont to do, and moves quickly to set off about it.
Thomas will find his way into the study and unbutton his waistcoat, or his heavy coat. Now, what's this grave news?
Oh, Thomas. I've tipped our hand.
A brow goes up.
I couldn't help it. The bastard threatened to destroy me. I gave Ambrose the letters.
And due to the machinations of Ragnar, he was tipped off to be suspicious of any negative information brought forth of her.
Thomas starts to chuckle.
What are you laughing at, you bloody fool? Did you not hear what we said?
You misunderstand. It's too ludicrous not to laugh. He slumps into a chair, resting a hand on his forehead, elbow on the arm of the chair. Oh. Did you give him any information about Ragnar, our suspicion?
Nothing. We've not mentioned her impending declaration of war, nor her gathering of troops. In fact, anything mentioned of her was quite minor. I believe.
Go ahead.
No, you're the one who saw it. You should speak.
I only told him what I saw in the vision, or rather, heard from Wolfric's mouth.
I'm sorry, you did what now?
We had to trust somebody, Elenid.
Wolfric's opinion of Ragnar is not unknown. It's fairly common knowledge, in fact. Restating a well-known fact hurt no one.
I certainly hope this doesn't go against what we had to agree to.
I said nothing else about Ragnar. He demanded proof from me. I had none.
Not of Ragnar, of our ally.
I told him he was destroyed. I think he believed me.
And what do we say to Kincaid? We told him we got nothing, and that he was destroyed by the time we found him.
Do you truly think Ambrose and Kincaid are so close they'd discuss that in detail?
Is that truly a risk you want to take?
I didn't want to take any risk. I panicked.
It's fine. Places a bit more seriousness on anything that follows, but we have a choice to make. I had planned to present certain arguments alongside those documents. They'll still land quite close to the mark. Most of it will still be worthwhile. Possibly might preserve peace between London and Lincoln, if that's what we want.
course we want that. If those two went to war, it would tear England apart.
Hear me out. Let's say we step forward, present additional details, salient points that Ambrose and his passions may have overlooked, things that weren't presented along with the paperwork due to the gravity of the situation. Fear of an elder brouhaha notwithstanding. Let's say he takes it all in. He believes it all, and the crisis is averted. What then?
I'm sure you have some idea. Don't leave us in suspense.
The Covenant is preserved for, what, another decade? Maybe another century, if we're very lucky. Power plays continue. Ragna continues her machinations. Life carries on much as it has, on life alongside it. Maybe. If we fail, none of it is believed. We are further discredited, one step closer to being either replaced or destroyed. However, due diligence has been completed. We've provided the evidence that was acquired, reported on it factually, with no additional flowery language or interpretations of the same, allowed someone of greater station to arrive at his own conclusions based on raw evidence.
You quite know me by now. I don't embellish.
You really must learn to. It's the spice of life. But because you didn't, we can carry no blame for what actions Ambrose chooses to take as a result of the evidence presented. It's concrete. There's no holes in it. It tells a story all on its own. It's not the story I would have chosen to present, but it's the one he heard. And it absolves us of any further responsibility in the matter.
Except for one thing. I did inform him that de Martinique's men were guarding these letters, and that we demanded our way past them.
Is that a fact, or is that an embellishment?
It's a fact.
That is a fact, unfortunately.
You were acting
Though
within
their
the
main goal there is for the weasel of a child, mainly to keep him out.
Then you were acting within the edicts of the Gauntlet. You were investigating the fall of the previous Gauntlet at the home of a previous Gauntlet lord. As I said, absolved of responsibility.
In Kincaid City without taking the letters to him first, but that blame is partially on.
We could do nothing. We could use this as an opportunity to see how things play out. It would allow Ragna ample opportunity to take whatever measures she chooses to forward her designs. Also, we could send a rider out to find the rebel encampment, notify them of the situation. Perhaps they might see the advantage in a destabilized London and Lincoln. Perhaps turning it to their own means.
Distract them with a different target.
Something like that.
We don't even know where we can find them. They hide themselves too well.
They move too much is the problem. Hiding is rather immaterial if you're gone by the time a report arrives at a local strong.
They don't seem like the kind who would think too much of a human messenger.
A human messenger bearing the seal of the Gauntlet, however.
You might be giving them too much credit.
Not if Robert's tales about Jack Timbers are to be.
I actually don't think Cormac heard that tale.
He should have. I think Robert mentioned at the meeting, but
Okay, then I'll assume he knows. He'll simply nod.
One of several options. I had thought to meet with some of the local neonates to pass along my condolences for the destruction of Amelia. I did, after all, incur a major boon, attempting to preserve her unlife.
Greatest of luck with that. None of them will talk to you, I assure you.
Had no luck going about with the man who carted her off to her execution, did you?
precisely. If you distance yourself from me, I'm certain you would have more luck.
I may have a way to distance myself from the Gauntlet as a whole. Whether or not they'll receive me is another question.
I'm sure your face is known by now. I do not think taking your ring off will be sufficient.
I don't think that's what he's talking about.
But, and Thomas quickly readjusts the subject, quieting the humors of Ambrose might be the better option. He will demand some form of recompense from Jean-Marc for the deception, I'm sure. There are several ways to go about that, so long as we are able to couch the offense in the most inoffensive terms possible.
We did only stumble upon it. This was not a purposeful attempt to cause tension.
I don't know that Ambrose cares one way or the other, but then again, I wasn't there. I couldn't.
If you go to see him, I think it's best that I don't go with you.
If I've learned nothing over the last few months, I have learned that it is best for us to present a unified front whenever possible.
You didn't see the look on his face, Thomas.
I'm sure it's a look that I'm not unfamiliar with. Ambrose is many things, a warrior, a prince, a leader, but he is also a learned man. An argument presented in reasonable terms that relies on logic and stands on evidence may not fall on deaf ears.
And when do you propose to present this argument?
How late in the evening is it currently?
It's getting to be quite late. You think maybe another hour to 2 hours before dawn.
How long would we have before Ragnarok?
There's no exact way to tell in this time, but you think... Let's see here. I have a quick note. You think maybe a week. Plus or minus a couple days, depending on travel and other things.
And if Jean-Marc left when we believe he received the message while we were en route, how long before he arrived?
That's really tough to say.
No.
Could be the same amount of time, shorter, longer, by a couple days. It's the same spread.
I'll send word to the Seneschal. She happens to have a soft spot for me. We'll see if she can't muster an audience with the assembled Gauntlet. And he'll look at Cormac. All of us.
You ask much of me.
I offer much of myself. I ask no less of you.
Very well. I will stand before him again under that gaze.
I'll divert it as much as I can. I shall ask her for an audience the night after next. That will give us some time to settle in, get a feel for how London is settled, see what her feedback is and respond to it appropriately. Perhaps Genevieve will ask to vet new information in advance. I couldn't say.
Alright. So did a group of you turn in for the coming day then?
Tom will send word to his sire's estate to the effect of requesting an audience the night, well, in 2 nights' time.
Alright, noted.
Well,
Anyone
an
else?
audience with Ambrose specifically, just so we're on the same page.
Excluding her?
Well, no, of course not. But
Okay.
Ambrose, not. Yes, that. Whatever.
Okay, got it.
Words are hard.
I understand. Cormac, anything else tonight before you take slumber for the day?
No.
Okay, Elenid?
Check and see how Gertrude is settling in, and then she'll go and turn in for.
Gertrude's exhausted from the travel, but otherwise doing fair. You find her asleep.
All right.
And Robert.
He'll turn in for the night.
Okay. Then the night ends and the dawn rises, taking you all into torpor for the day. And Thomas, you receive word back from a messenger from your sire that the audience is granted, but she wishes to speak with you personally that night, the following night.
I had a feeling.
What is everyone else doing in the meantime? I'll start with Cormac. On the following night, as you rise, you know probably that Tom is departing for some amount of time. Does Cormac have any plans this evening?
No, he's going to wait until the audience with the prince is granted, or ready to be attended, I should say.
Okay. And Robert? Any plans on your interim night, Robert?
On what night?
The night before the night of your audience.
Nothing in particular at this moment.
Okay. And Elenid?
Well, seeing that there are quite a few people lingering around the manor, she will inquire if any of them are, well, her two other coterie members lingering on the manor. She will inquire if they are interested in playing that tactic game she hasn't been able to test yet.
Alright, so Cormac and Robert, you get this invitation to play a game of wits with Elenid.
Cormac welcomes the distraction.
As will Robert.
Excellent. You have your players.
Huzzah.
So while that's happening, we will transition and we'll check in on Tom as he meets with his sire. Thomas, you're brought into the study once you arrive at Genevieve Silver's home and find her standing looking out to one of the windows which overlooks this long street, Mercer Street, one of the more affluent streets in London. And she turns to you as you enter. Ah, please, come, sit.
Thomas does as he's bidden. I had a feeling you...
Go ahead.
I had a feeling you might wish to see me before.
Yes, I imagine you have been informed of the prince's demeanor after the presentation just several nights ago by your companions.
It was not meant to go that way.
She shifts her jaw as she joins you, sitting down at one of the couches and crossing her legs. She looks more anxious than you've seen her in the past. She's usually quite stony-faced.
There are certain things I'm sure that you are not at liberty to discuss. Though I would ask if Ambrose has made any preparations as yet to act upon this information.
Ambrose is quite upset. Still. And she looks at you, her eyes going back and forth.
I believe his ire is misdirected. And I believe that misdirection was deliberate. I believe that my companions were meant to find those ledgers, those documents, and present them precisely as they did, with no accompanying explanation at all. Which is why it wasn't meant to go that way.
Perhaps not. From my perspective, it does seem, with what limited information I have, that the Gauntlet went to great lengths to get this information of their own volition.
Indeed. In pursuit of an investigation assigned to the Gauntlet by the Covenant.
What do you intend to present to Ambrose tomorrow night?
A more complete picture of exactly what that evidence represents. Gaetan's child had motive, opportunity, and access. We know that the postscript was a forgery. I believe that postscript was intended to show distrust sown between Gaetan and Jean-Marc. I don't believe that Jean-Marc is aware that Cornelius was named as the inheritor of a controlling interest in the company of the staple.
And what if you are
Simplest.
wrong? She interrupts you.
If he was in fact aware, well, recompense must be exacted. Though I would propose a just adjudication.
You are well aware of Ambrose's lineage. All are, of course. He is not in a good state to hear this evidence presently, I imagine.
What would you suggest the alternative is?
I have served him long enough to know that his bouts of emotion can run its course, and then he returns to a more controlled nature. But it can take nights, sometimes many nights, depending on the agitation. I suggest we wait. You wait.
Unfortunately, this information was given to me far, far too late. On the road from York, I sent word to Jean-Marc that we would be presenting evidence and that he would be invited to hear that presentation.
You did what? And her eyes widen in fear.
I had no idea at the time that those documents would be presented in my absence.
You know what this would look like, yes?
I have several ideas of what it might look like.
It will look like he's being invited to his own slaughter.
Which is why I had requested an audience immediately. I don't know if he accepted the invitation. I don't know if he's on the road presently. If the Seneschal of London happened to send a messenger out in search of a convoy under the triplicate Pegasus and ask them to hold over in a different town, Cambridge, perhaps. Or I could bear Ambrose's ill humor. I do not wish to summon anyone to their execution. I believe that Jean-Marc is as much a victim in all this as Gaetan was.
None of these options are very promising, Thomas. When she enunciates your name the way she does, the way you know she says when she knows your identity but is annoyed with you.
No. It's a less than ideal solution to a less than ideal situation. But all of our solutions at the moment are less than ideal.
The more riled Ambrose is, the less he will see reason, the more he will see red.
Then you and I must work to calm those humors.
There is no calming his blood. It is his nature.
I'm well aware of his nature, but he is also a learned man.
The beast cares nothing for academics, and you know that. If you proceed with your audience tomorrow, I beg you to use the greatest of caution in what you present and how you present it, lest you add more oil to this fire.
I've had some weeks to consider exactly how to present it.
I do not see a reasonable way to harry or halt Jean-Marc if he is indeed on his way, as I imagine he would be after his manor was ransacked.
It was Gaetan's manor, and I trust Cormac and Elenid to have been as delicate as possible. But I believe Alfonso, Gaetan's child, was perhaps less delicate.
If the news has reached London, it will certainly have reached Lincoln.
I'm sure. That being the case, if he believes that the manor was ransacked, Jean-Marc will be in quite a state. What I don't want, at the moment, is outright conflict between Lincoln and London.
That is precisely the recipe you have created here, you and the Gauntlet.
That was not our intention. But A forceful word can have a great impact. Ambrose got the information he wanted, not the information he needed.
He is in a state of ire I have only seen several times while serving him. Tread carefully, my child.
I will do my best to avoid making the situation any worse. Ideally, I would have Ambrose's support and season Alfonso where he stands to find exactly who it was who put him up to planting and directing evidence against Jean-Marc.
My recommendation to you, for the longevity of your own life, is, if you do not make progress with Ambrose, best to quit the audience while you are ahead.
If we do nothing, if we are unsuccessful, the Covenant failed.
But would you rather escape a burning house or an inferno?
Thomas narrows his eyes.
You said yourself, these are not ideal circumstances. The outcome, whatever it is, shall not be pretty. But that does not mean it cannot get worse. For you, for me.
Has Ambrose already been informed of my request?
She nods as she reaches to pour herself a drink from this decanter. Your audience is granted. Tomorrow.
Then I must proceed. It would be unseemly for me to avoid an audience I had already requested.
No, you must present yourself, of course, but you may choose to leave. If you do not find yourself in his good graces, if this does not progress the way you wish, better to make your exit. Yes? And she sips. There is a slim chance you may improve things. There is a much greater chance that you worsen them and inflame them.
At the very least, I would like to make sure that Alfonso is named directly as the source of the misinformation and the reason why these documents were recovered at all. They may be authentic. They were placed there with a purpose and placed into Cormac's hands with an intent. And I would know the reason why.
I truly cannot say if it is better for you to be right or wrong.
What would you have me do? Would you have me give my all to preserve the Covenant and defend England? Or would you have me preserve my own skin?
She stops drinking and looks up to you. Be a realist, Judith. This was never going to last. All of this. And she kind of gestures out broadly.
How long have you known about her plans?
She raises an eyebrow at you. Whose plans?
We don't think that a Covenant prince holds sway over the Duke of York, Lord Protector of England, for no reason.
She shifts her weight. I do not pretend to know what Prince Ragnar's plans are. But holding sway over the kind of influence is not new or rare among our kind.
But you know something. You smell it on the wind.
I have long suspected the Covenant would fall at some point in some decade. Truthfully, I am impressed it lasted this long. But it seems perhaps you have manifested the appropriate circumstances with which to ruin its fourth leg and bring the table down. Whether you intended to or not, I'm inclined to believe you are not. But I have expected this for some time. And now, I urge you to not die trying to hold it together. And she's leaning forward, looking to you. It'd be a senseless waste. She sits back and takes another sip.
I would not be my father's daughter if I allowed open slaughter between two warring princes to fell so many over a needless dispute over something as shallow as money.
She looks to you with worried eyes. Idealism is not kind to Canaanites, Judith. I thought after this long you would know that.
Neither is politics, but we deal with one. Why not treat with the other?
Because one is a weapon you can use outwardly, the other is only ever pointed in.
Ellen Alice thinks differently. And to hear Robert say it, so does Jack Timbers.
Do not dance around the idea of consorting with them.
I'm not dancing around anything, Genevieve. These rebels, as they've been classified, have taken their idealism and turned it into a weapon. Their numbers swell. Their numbers swell even more when unilateral executions take place at the behest of a Covenant prince. Amelia was a warning. That was the last time I attempted to stop an overzealous Covenant prince from doing something reckless and stupid by saving him from himself. Perhaps you're right. Perhaps I should just let it all burn. But then what fills the void when it's fallen?
This land is no stranger to wars. Not since William the Conqueror arrived here, in the harrying of the North. There has been violence here for some time, intermittently, but it has been present. Those who fall on the sword of fundamentalism die for no reason, while the elders survive by staying down. The kind rebuild, and let me reclaim what we lost. It is the way we have existed.
But there are a great many more young now. Many of them backed the peasant rebellion not long ago.
I suspect you will be disappointed if you entertain the ideas of these, and she corrects herself, or stops herself, of Ellen Alice and Jack Timbers. More than likely they used this facade of idealism for their own means.
As do they all. We all put up a front to get what we want. I play the merchant, the man. Ambrose plays the patriarch.
Then there is no point in dying for something you do not believe in.
As I said, maybe I should just let it all burn.
She sets her goblet down and rises, straightening out her gown. I am wanted by Ambrose soon. I hope you will think on these words, my child.
I had such a beautiful speech prepared.
She smirks.
For Jean-Marc's sake, I hope he is in good spirits tomorrow.
She crosses the salon, looking to you one last time as she exits. And then she is gone. You have the remainder of the night. What will you do?
So Thomas, quote unquote, is going to make his way across town to the back entrance of Judith's Inn, change, and then make for Elysium. And Judith will make an appearance at Elysium.
All right. With what goal in mind?
So I don't remember if I mentioned that out loud in voice. So the goal being to, yeah, I mentioned it in the meeting just a little bit ago in the scene, to seek out Amelia's acquaintances, friends, offer condolences and a sympathetic ear.
All right, just to build rapport with those who knew Amelia.
Including Bella. Maybe even use Bella to help facilitate those.
Okay. You are able enough to make your way out back to Judith's Inn, change, and enter Elysium. It's quite busy tonight. I will have you roll an appearance etiquette, difficulty 6. Judith is something of a blank slate. Closer to 1 than Thomas, at least. One success. Do you have any specialties there?
Sadly, no.
Okay. It's slow going. You present yourself to Bella, and through her you make contact with a few of the neonates who knew Amelia briefly. You generally hear from them that they do admit their concern, their fear, their anger towards the Covenant and the Gauntlet, especially Robert most of all, obviously. And their presence as a whole in London makes them want to avoid Elysium altogether. They think if they hide in the shadows, if they avoid sight, that they won't get picked for questioning next. And through your talks, even just by being a listening ear, you gain a little bit of rapport, at least starting to. You become a face they recognize a handful of these individuals, and Bella seems to give you an approving nod for the time you give.
To Bella specifically, she would possibly be overly familiar in the way that she clasps Bella's hand and lays a consoling hand upon Bella's shoulder, assuming none of these are overtly rejected.
No, Bella's very friendly and open to physical touch, so it seems she matches your confidence. So your appearance, your building of rapport is mildly successful in Elysium. At least it started. Is there anything else you want to do with your remaining night?
I wouldn't mind an interaction with Bella directly in a little bit more detail, unless there's nothing really to do.
Sure,
Mostly
sure.
just trying to flesh that rapport out.
make use of this portrait, even though it's technically a different one. So you're approaching Bella as you're making these connections, beginning to make these connections with some of these neonates, and she looks to you, giving a faint smile, leaning back in one of these day beds. It was kind of you to do, and unexpected. What was your name again? I've seen you once or twice, I think.
Judith Stone. I keep an inn. And other ventures.
Why don't I see more of you?
Politics tend to be a blade that cuts both ways. I would much rather simply tend to my businesses and keep to myself for the most part. Though happenstance has put me in the way of a few interesting predicaments. I'm just returned from Liverpool, actually.
Make manipulation subterfuge. Standard. I cannot say I've been out that way very much.
It's rather dour country, if I'm honest. Though Barbaros was not unwelcoming.
I hear he's something of a bore. A true... Oh, what's the word? A bull of a man.
It's putting it mildly.
Did you say you were a friend of Amelia?
I knew her. Briefly.
How?
She took advantage of some of my wares. My inn does serve our kind from time to time.
She nods once. Do you expect to be here long, Judith Stone? Or
In
shall you be-
London?
Yes.
I've been here quite some time already. I don't intend on... Don't worry, I don't intend on stealing your spotlight. There's a reason you haven't seen me in Elysium.
Oh my
She's-
dear, you could never do that. And she smiles.
Nor would I wish to. It's quite warm under the spotlights, as I understand it. And that positively wilt in the heat.
Well, I am not sure how familiar you are with the resident Gauntlet that is taking up here, but the neonates here are not wrong. You might consider yourself just as at risk by being out here at all in Elysium. Visible, that is.
I've not been given towards believing ghost stories. Not since I was a wee lass, anyway.
Well, the story of Amelia is quite real, I assure you.
Yes. Unfortunate. As I understand it, someone's mouth got ahead of them.
I suspect if all of them are present, there may be some hullabaloo in court soon. Should I expect to find you in the crowd?
Unlikely. Court bores me.
In truth, you're safe for avoiding it, my dear.
I'm sure I'll hear of it one way or another. Were you and Amelia close at all?
I'm afraid not very. She was here but a few months before they took her away. She had some promise as a harpy, was she not so naive? That was quickly being repaired, but not nearly enough time to hide her away.
You impress me. I hadn't thought that you'd take such an interest in a charity case.
I find the older I get, the more I bore myself. But the young, the youth, they always seem to have interesting stories, interesting backgrounds. And there is endless potential in them. So I find myself drawn more to the young than the old.
Tell me, are you concerned about all of the Gauntlet members? I understand that the Chamberlain fellow spoke out on Amelia's behalf.
She watches you closely for a few moments. I do have concern for all of them. They are the hounds of the Covenant Princes, after all. If by nothing else, they are obligated to do such atrocities. How can you truly trust anyone with that kind of responsibility? Much less if they act on it as Lord de Vere did.
You know, I understand being mistrustful of the responsible party, but it seems unjust to transfer that guilt simply by association.
Their opinions mean little to me. Their actions and responsibilities more. Lord Chamberlain may have spoken out on Amelia's behalf, and indeed he did incur a boon for her. So there is something to be said there. But then if he truly cared, perhaps he would have been here. Perhaps he would have stopped it. Perhaps he would be doing something right now.
Perhaps he is. But who can say?
She smiles faintly.
I inquire of him specifically because he and I are concluding a business arrangement at the turning of the year. I simply wish to know a little bit more about the gentleman from whom I am purchasing a sizable business interest.
Then I should suggest you speak to him yourself.
I have, of course. But we all do wear faces, don't we?
She nods again, the smile maintained on her face. Well, I cannot say to have known him very well myself.
Wasn't his father one of us?
You know your history well. He was.
I know those with whom I conduct business. I make it my business to know them intimately. Do you think Chamberlain the Younger has taken much after Chamberlain the Elder?
Even if I thought so, we all do wear faces, don't we?
So you did know his father?
I think perhaps not as well as I would like to have.
Judith presents a rather somber expression at that. And she'll reach out a hand, place it on top of Villa's. For that, I again offer my condolences.
She places another hand on top of yours. Thank you, my dear. But that is ancient history.
Not to him, and it does not appear to be ancient to you either.
I cannot speak to the boy, the ancestor, I should say, Thomas. How much he might have compared to his father, Quentin. I wish I could be more help to you, my dear.
You have been more than gracious.
I think my humors are taking a turn for the dour. find myself smiling less. I think I shall quit Elysium for the night.
I hope it's nothing to do with me. I didn't mean to sour your...
She offers a polite smile as she stands. I hope to see you again soon, Judith Stone.
Perhaps. We'll see what the new year brings.
She passes by and squeezes your upper arm as she goes.
And Judith will pat her hand lightly. Good evening, Ms. Matea.
And off she goes. Where does Judith mean to go with what remains of the night?
Probably after another quick change back, returning to the Chamberlain Manor to share what Thomas heard from Genevieve.
All right. Then the scene fades on Judith leaving Elysium. And on that note, we will pause here since it's 7, and we will come back in 15 to continue.
Swell!
Sorry for taking up such a huge, humongous chunk of time just now. That was
What a jerk.
100% not my goal.
Unlike certain people, Night Shadow, I don't mind some of that. Sometimes scenes run long.
Granted, but yeah, I don't like doing it on purpose. It's really,
Yeah.
But I hadn't had a good Judith scene in a while, so I wanted.
Okay, be back soon.
Yep.
All right, are we all back? Go, Robert.
Yep.
Oh, excellent. Even better, I had all 3 of my raisin boxes, which means I got a full serving of fruit today. Don't know about you guys.
Is pizza sauce a fruit?
No.
I am a full saving of fruit.
But I'm chain. Is that a gay joke? I think that was a gay joke.
Why, yes, it was.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's well done. Okie doke. Let us get back into it. So organized. So the night concludes. Prior to the audience, Tom, you get a chance to return back to the manor, finding Elenid, Cormac, and Robert engaged in a battle of wits over Elenid's newly constructed strategy game. And you reveal to them your exchange with Genevieve, as I believe you said you were going to.
Yes, indeed.
Did you want to open that scene, or is it safe to say that they know the warnings that Genevieve gave and your discussion in general?
I think it bears fleshing out a little, unless there are objections. Like, if nobody else wants to open that scene, I'm not going to force it.
Why don't we open that scene so you can clarify what's said, at least? So as I said, you find the group gathered around this table. It looks like some pieces are set about. You vaguely recognize what looks like maybe the organization of military pieces, you think, when you step in and all of you are together in the study.
Robert will look up from the game to regard Thomas.
Either I will have a very well-attended presentation for my return to London, or we will narrowly avert outright war between Lincoln and London. And it all hinges on the temperament of an elder Bruja.
Quite the gamble.
My sire believes it is better to preserve my own hide than to attempt to preserve the the covenant.
Do you think the Covenant is good for England?
Ellen and I had a very similar conversation on the road down from York. I don't know if the Covenant is good for England, but I know even less about what might fill the void if the Covenant fails entirely.
There are many rebellions that have started over the years that have had pretty words, but when it came down to it, few would actually act on those words.
However, I did have a trusted associate break words with Bella Matea and the neonates of London. Some of them, at least. They are anxious. Most notably, they're anxious because the four of us are gathered in one city at one time.
You caused the death of one neonate, and this is what you get. Cormac grins at that, looking pointedly at Robert.
Yes. I am certain the Council is a thing to fear now, considering all we've done.
So when do we meet with Ambrose?
Tomorrow. I understand Bella has made it her business to attend. Which means half the Canaanites in London will be there, if not more.
We'll tell them they have to leave. We don't need an audience for what we're going to say.
What are we going to say?
That all depends on you. I intend having my mouth shut.
One thing has occurred to me above all others. We must be unified.
Blah, blah, you say the same things. What does that mean?
It means that if I am to act, I will not take an action that the three of you do not support. If it is decided that I will simply present myself and quietly exit the room and allow Ambrose to do what Ambrose will do, so be it. I trust your opinions far more than I trust my sire's at this point. She's far more interested in preserving her status and skin than anything else.
If we could avoid all-out war, then that is the option that I would go for.
That does seem best unless... Well, you wish to see Ragna take the throne of London.
I'm not yet 100% convinced that is, in fact, her goal. London is a jewel, to be sure, but not the only one. Must be unanimous, though. Cormac. Shall I quietly present myself and return to the manor?
I want you to try to repair this.
Then we are agreed. And Genevieve's advice be damned.
So be it.
For whatever it's worth, I wish I had come to this realization before we had departed York. I should have been more clear, and I bear a significant responsibility for how things played out when the two of you arrived, and for that I am sorry. This is not a weight I would have had you carry alone, Cormac.
What's done is done.
Thomas will cross to Cormac and lay a hand on his shoulder and give a squeak.
Cormac returns the gesture.
Maybe it all blows up in our faces and we flee to Dublin.
We'd be welcome there.
Thomas chuckles. Until the Covenant came hunting us anyway.
And they would.
Just a matter of how many soldiers we'd be able to muster before then.
I can promise you 20.
It's a start.
All right. The group of you proceed on with the next day.
Unless there's objections.
I'm not hearing any.
All
Nope.
right. And we will transition forward to the following evening. Who all is going with Thomas to his presentation? Or is everyone going?
He said he wanted us all to go.
All right. So a couple hours after dusk falls on the following evening, Thomas leads the group of you out to be presented, along with Elenid, to be fair. She also has to be presented, technically. And you make your way back into Westminster, back down the path that leads to St. Mary's Undercroft. And you find an impatient Ambrose pacing at the end of the Undercroft at the dais. Genevieve is present tonight, though Cash is not. There are a handful of neonates here watching. Bella as well has made herself in the crowd. And you are making your way down the aisle. You reach the end and see that Ambrose stops in his pacing and turns to you.
Thomas takes a knee. Your Grace.
He looks silently from you to Elenid.
Ned will curtsy as well.
The gauntlet is returned to its entirety. I'm afraid you have caught me in a foul mood, Lord Chamberlain.
I am afraid that my tardiness is partly to blame for that foul mood.
He looks at each of you in turn, as though thoughtful. He's not frustrated or visibly angry, but the stony and stoic gaze does have a hint of irritation at the undercurrent.
You were provided documents by Cormac and Robert several nights hence, recovered from Gaeton's estate in Bristol.
Yes, I was.
These were obtained from Gaeton's estate, which was under guard by Jean-Marc's men. He will have been informed of this, and I worry that he may act rashly as a result.
he has already acted rashly.
Your Grace, if you wish it, I need not continue. You know the full face of the issue to which I speak. I would simply wish to characterize it in more concrete terms, inasmuch as it impacts the investigation which the Gauntlet has been tasked.
Speak your mind, Chamberlain. Stop rambling.
I thank you. Included in those documents will have been a last will and testament, bequeathing controlling interest of the company of the staple to Gaetan's ghoul Cornelius. A fact which we are certain Jean-Marc would have been aware. I believe this is why he has been so protective of the man. Of particular note, there was a postscript instruction addressed to Cornelius directing him to seek protection with the other Gauntlet members in the event that harm befell Gaetan. That was a forgery, and I further believe that though these other documents are authentic, it appears that Jean-Marc was ignorant of the true breadth of the enterprise, as Gaetan seemed to hold operational management of it.
I am aware of the forged postscript. It is a paltry consideration compared to what has been revealed to me.
Yes, I agree. What may have not been elucidated entirely to you was that we believe that Cormac and Elenid were meant to find all of it, and that Gaetan's child Alfonso was complicit in planting the forged document, twisting Gaetan's will to suit the conspirator's need who put his hand to the task. He assuredly knows more than he is letting on, but we did not come to that realization until we were reunited in York. It would appear that either Alfonso, or whoever put him up to the task, wishes to implicate Jean-Marc in the demise of the Gauntlet.
If an outside force seeks to manipulate the Covenant, it will be dealt with. I will send word to Kincaid to have this Alfonso dealt with and questioned. But this is set aside from the fact that the misdeeds of the Lincoln Prince have been brought to light and will be answered for.
If recompense must be exacted for deception, as I believe it must, may I present a suggestion?
He narrows his eyes at you.
Relieve Jean-Marc of control over the company of the staple. For a period of your discerning, place it in the stewardship of an impartial party. I can recommend several such. I would also further suggest that influence over Cornelius be removed from him. I would siege Gaetan's will on it. The most logical solution is to allow another Cainite to embrace Cornelius and take him under tutelage. I would put forth Caleb Esquire as a capable candidate for this responsibility. He has the resources, the education, and the peerage to facilitate both the transition of Cornelius and the company of the staple into its new leadership arrangement. He happens also to be the broodmate of a Gauntlet member and the child of your seneschal, making it painfully easy to keep a close set of trusted eyes on his progress.
I have made similar considerations. Jean-Marc will be relinquishing control of the merchants of the staple to the guidance of the Covenant, one way or another.
Further, the same steps may need to be taken for the domain of Lincoln. But I would suggest that Jean-Marc be allowed to retain his status and title, and his right to speak and vote at Covenant meetings. Strip him of his singular authority, and elevate one of his advisors to the role of Prince Steward, so that Lincoln can see a trusted face in a leadership role, and avoid a rocking transition that would follow a coup or the fall of a prince. Jean-Marc will save face, Lincoln will remain strong, but decisive action will have been taken to discourage further breaches of the Covenant by any of the member princes. I would put forth Hugh de Belchamp to fill this role.
Cormac's eyes snap over to Thomas, and the look in them is death.
Make a charisma expression roll, difficulty 8.
Is that for Cormac or Thomas?
For Thomas.
I have a trash dice pool there, so I'm going to spend some willpower on that.
Alright, 2 successes with the willpower. He watches you with narrowed eyes as you speak, and pauses after a moment to nod once. These suggestions are reasonable. Whether Jean-Marc accepts them is to be determined.
As I was unaware of how events were proceeding here in London during my return from York, I sent word to Lincoln that evidence would be presented to you. I didn't elaborate beyond that. If he chose to accept this invitation, he will not be but a few nights behind us.
Good. Then you may be present when he is here to answer for his actions and accept his punishment.
Ragna also departed York around the same time by land that Cormac and Robert departed York. She will undoubtedly be only a few nights behind Jean-Marc, if not arriving approximately the same time. If I might suggest pausing in presenting this to Jean-Marc until her arrival, to lend gravity to the situation.
I'm aware of Prince Ragna's imminent arrival. She has sent word ahead. I also think it appropriate that she be present for this. Would that the entire Covenant could convene a council so quickly. The two of us shall suffice for this judgment.
If I may go on record as saying, I would ask for mercy for Jean-Marc's part, though it is not my right to do so.
No, it is not. Jean-Marc's fate depends on Jean-Marc alone.
May wisdom guide your actions, my liege. And he'll bow.
He nods to you, and then looks to Eleanor, giving her a nod as well, in approval from the prince for your presentation.
And he'll turn and nod at Bella.
She watches with interested eyes, the hint of a content smile on her face as she looks at you, passing through the aisle.
And he'll glance at his fellow Gauntlet lords and lady, and then glance towards the door. If there will be nothing else, your grace.
He waves you off as he turns to depart from the dais. Genevieve gives you a look of relief as she follows after.
Once Ambrose has departed the chamber, he'll exhale. I've done what I can.
And I was with you until you recommended my sire as Prince Stewart.
Can you think of a more stabilizing influence for Lynn?
I think Hugh would sooner cut off his arm than betray Jean-Paul in such a way.
It would not be a betrayal.
Wouldn't it, though?
Not at all.
Supplanting him.
Being assigned a duty is no such thing as supplanting a trusted ally, merely keeping a seat warm.
I wonder if Jean-Marc will see it that way.
I hope that he does. I also hope that Ambrose is true to his word. He seems interested in avoiding the shed of blood. Would that Jean-Marc also have the same goal in mind?
You could have at least talked to me about this first.
He'd have tried to convince me of otherwise.
Yes, probably. But I wouldn't have succeeded.
Besides which, I'm sure that the Covenant will find a more suitable candidate. But to come with a suggestion and no candidate in mind would have weakened the argument.
I'll give you that. And I do hope they find someone more suitable.
Unfortunately, I can't think of anyone.
Well, that's an easy enough problem. You don't know everyone.
Fair point. Is Bella still...
She is.
And the neonates?
Mm-hmm. Kind of gathered around here, chit-chatting.
Thomas is going to approach. I would like to express my condolences to the Lady Matea.
What's Robert doing right now?
He's partially watching as things are going on, but if he sees Thomas doing this, he may just leave.
And what is Elena doing?
Elena is, for the most part, keeping watch, keeping her mouth shut. She's generally not one for courtly situations.
Bella does seem to be dispersing the crowd of neonates around her as she is looking to leave also when you intercept her.
I wished to thank you for providing what comfort you did to Amelia in my absence. I wished that I could have saved her.
She looks you up and down for a moment. Would that all the Gauntlet believed that I had such good intentions for Amelia.
Truth be told, I wasn't sure at first.
I'm aware.
I judged you too harshly, I think, and for that I apologize.
You need not apologize to me, Thomas Chamberlain. When you incurred the debt on her behalf, I saw where your heart lay. There's nothing more to be said about it now.
I only hope that further bloodshed can be avoided, for surely it will be those neonates you dismissed who will suffer the brunt of it.
Not if I can say something about it. And she offers a wry smile. If you'll excuse me.
Thomas quirks his head a bit. A little smirk. I would dearly love to have a conversation about that sometime.
She continues on, smiling at you over her shoulder, but makes her way out. And with that, it's really just the group of you. Do you intend to return to the manor, or what does the Gauntlet do? It seems like Robert has left.
Robert's going to head back to the manor.
Okay. That leaves 3 of you. What does Elena do?
Likely go by the usual place she went to back when they were in London to get something to eat.
Okay. Elena goes off to feed. What does Cormac do?
Cormac is going to excuse himself and return to the manor.
That leaves Tom.
Thomas is just gonna go for a stroll on the streets for a little while.
Two of you return to the manor. Elenid, You are free to roll for hunting this evening, as I believe you already have established at least some rapport with one or two of the inns here, if I'm not mistaken.
It was a singular one.
Okay. So you can roll for hunting, as Tom takes a lengthy scenic route around the city. It's busy. The world of the Kine is blissfully unaware of the dangerous politics that lurk within their midst. Even those who are aware of the courtly politics of the Duke and the King seem at ease, an ease that you don't experience because you know the danger they all face.
I think Tom's route's going to take him down near the docks.
Okay. And Elenid, I'm still waiting on that hunting roll.
Difficulty.
I'll say 5, since you have established yourself here in the past. Four successes for noms. You, over the course of an hour or so, find 4 people you can feed from fairly easily and without much trouble this night.
Let's see. I take 3 blood points.
Okay.
Not all from one, naturally. Don't want to cause anyone to pass.
Easily done. Thomas, you spend some time by the ever-expanding port of London, which has just grown in such great size as there are no ports which mirror it in England. Is there anything in particular you would like to do at the docks?
Looking for sentient shadows, mostly.
Unfortunately, this night you did not find them.
In that case, he'll make his way back to quote-unquote Judith Stone's inn and do a bit of hunting for himself.
Alright. And you as well can make a difficulty 5, unless you're using your herd. I think you have herd. Using it.
Yep.
Okay. Then I think you can just take blood points from there, if I'm not mistaken.
I've heard so many different ways that's applied.
What's your herd?
4.
Okay. We'll say you can take 4 blood points without any roll and any problem.
Fair enough. I really only need, 1.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, that's very easy to do. So now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. As there's going to be some downtime until things start waking up again. You all are going to have about a week of time to do things in London as you all await the expected arrival of Ragna and possible arrival of Jean-Marc, if he is coming. We will start with Elenid. What do you do over this week?
Well, they were given these notes by their Cappadocian out. And she wishes to study them further. Though she can't speak a lick of Greek or read a lick of Greek, so she's probably going to attempt to commandeer Cormac for that on the hunt to try to find a library to study it in. A library that will hopefully have proper resources for it.
Mm-hmm. So Cormac, you're approached by Elenid, hoping that with some time to breathe, you might further investigate these notes that might uncover more information about Hezekiah's contact, this lost Cappadocian.
And he definitely agrees to this. The scholar in him cannot resist.
The question is the library in the area of the city we are forbidden to...
It's not so much that there are forbidden areas that you can't get to, so much as the resources, and Cormac would be very knowledgeable in this. There are books certainly available through... There's actually a couple bookstores in London, and there are many chapels and churches in the area with texts that you could study. But it would be most helpful if you got to one of these universities like Cambridge or Oxford. So there are resources to draw from in London. Though they're not ideal, you can begin some of your research here. And I'm going to assume that you are going to try and make use of those resources, even though they're not ideal. So I will take an intelligence academics roll, difficulty 7 from both of you. You can combine your successes here. You have a target number of successes in mind. I will let you know when you hit it. You probably will not hit it in this week. Alright. Surprisingly, even with the limited resources here in London, you managed to get 6 successes together. Mostly, you're looking up information about this Ammonite, and you're finding there are not many places where you would find one, or even an engraving of one. And so the progress has helped you kind of eliminate areas that you might look for. But you suspect that there are texts out there that would be much more helpful in determining where you should look. So your progress, while definite, is still definitely incomplete. You also think you've probably exhausted the resources that London has to offer here. But I would make a note that you have 6 successes in progress to this, and remind me if I don't remember.
When we have the time again, if we survive all this, we should take a trip to Cambridge. The library there is exquisite.
Yes, the thought of utilizing their library has crossed my mind.
I even know ways that we could do it without attracting attention.
Do you now?
I did spend many years of my young life there. Granted, things will have changed in 100 and some years. But how much?
Nevertheless, that is still very useful.
Alright. So, with a promising start to your research looking into Hezekiah's contact, you conclude your week of research. Meanwhile, what is Robert DeVere doing with his time over the next week?
He's going to spend time hunting to fill up the blood pool he's let slack.
For all intents and purposes, none of you need to count this next week as 7 lost blood points. I'll assume you maintain just enough to stay where you're at. But you can still hunt in addition to that if you want.
He'll hunt in addition then.
Okay. And how are you hunting?
He'll head down to the inns. He'll just mingle with the crowd.
Alright, Charisma Empathy, standard difficulty. And while you're rolling that, Tom, how are you spending next week?
So I've got a couple of things in mind. I understand that there are some disused castles, small castles, but castles nonetheless, on the outskirts of London proper. Would have Cassim look into their current ownership peerage and what have you, and inquire as to how one might go about acquiring such a property.
Okay. This will take him out of the city for a considerable amount of time, riding around, getting information, and actually visiting these castles and figuring out who owns it and more information about it. So he'll be unavailable, but he'll be spending this time looking into it.
Okay. I would also try and lend a hand where possible to Brandon in his recruiting efforts in London. See if we can't draw a few more swords, or at least strong arms to wield them.
Alright, so you want to aid in Brandon's recruiting for more troops to follow you?
Yep.
Okay.
Eventually, these 20 are going to be called back to their liege, so best to make the most of their employ while.
And is the intent to hire these men right away? You find men, they join your band of 20, and then eventually the 20 leave, but you have the remaining men?
I would like to at least replace those that are leaving, if not increase on top of that.
Okay.
And then, of course, if they don't want to go back, they're not exactly knights.
And is there any... Can you describe more, how are you going about recruiting and who you're recruiting? Are you vetting them? Are you looking for certain men? How thorough and specific are you being?
Fairly thorough, preferably those who have prior military experience. Proper military, not necessarily mercenaries, though he's not going to rule them out entirely.
Alright, charisma... Go ahead.
I was going to say, mostly he's looking for a particular militaristic bearing, certain mannerisms, not the rough-shorn, nearly brigands that they dealt with from Lincoln to Chester.
Okay, then I will take a charisma leadership roll, difficulty 8. I'll pool this with Brandon's.
Can we just not have Brandon involved? Can we just...
Oh, you sent him to the task. He's trying his best.
Just saying.
So that was your 2 successes?
Yep.
Alright. You net one success, really in spite of Brandon's efforts. He seems overly enthusiastic, and his youthful naivete comes through at full bore, and a lot of people don't think you're legitimate, or they look at you weird. They're not sure if this is an actual band you're putting together. After everything is said and done, you gain one man who is willing to take a chance. He's a bit older, in his late 30s, older for this period, that is to say, especially for soldiers. And he does have some experience as a militia. He's never been in a war, but he's healthy and sturdy. He does know how to ride a horse, and he's held a sword before. He would make do as a good footman, or perhaps a mediocre rider.
Look, we're not discriminating on age. We're just looking for guys.
So this is the man you find after a week.
It's dismal effort for a week. With what time would be remaining? Judith would maybe not spend time immediately in Elysium, because if she starts becoming a regular fixture there, it's going to raise more questions. But she would go seeking out these neonates that she made acquaintance with, building on the rapport that she's already got established.
Okay. I'm not going to have you re-roll that one so soon, but it is enough to say that you've been seen there more than once, so the neonates know that you're not just a ghost or a transient figure. You've been to Elysium a couple of times and spoken with them. It certainly aids a bit in building rapport with them. So you're able to do that when you're not attempting to correct for your sergeant's missteps.
Poor Brandon.
He's doing his darndest. And at the end of this week, you all hear news as it reaches not just the Canaanites, but the Kine. There's big news one of these nights that's quickly flooding the streets. The flag of the White Rose of York has been spotted, and by evening, by dusk, as you all come out to find out about this, it is known that the Duke of York has arrived in London with his retinue and his entourage to attend court for something. And among the Canaanites, it is known that Prince Ragna has arrived as well, and she means to present herself in court at midnight on the night. So that gives you a few hours. I'll assume everyone is attending this.
I have no objection to that.
Robert will go.
Ned will as well.
Alright. And Cormac?
Yes.
Okay. And we will transition. The four of you enter St. Mary's Undercroft again, in anticipation of this presentation by Ragna. And court is packed tonight. There are many in attendance. Ambrose stands at the end of the dais in his simple brown doublet and breeches and his dark cape coming down from the shoulders. The Seneschal Genevieve at his right side, the Sheriff Cash to his left, and the man with the black rod to his side. And the door opens, this large wooden double door opens, as Ragna is seen approaching down the aisle wearing a tight-fitting gray lace gown. Her small entourage, including the ghoul Ethan Sharp, her two children, Jesper and Dorothy, her guard Lydia, all falling in behind. And the crowd is made up of a number of regulars. Many neonates are in attendance tonight, but also others. The Harpy Helen, Tom, your brother Caleb is there, Simone Deschamps, Mordecai, the ghoul Tom Lafoy, and even the diplomat of the Camarilla, Cesar de Leon. The neonates scatter to get out of the way as Ragna approaches and makes her way down the aisle, finally stopping in front of the dais. Of course, you do catch a look from Ragna as she passes by the group of you. She is first to break the silence, speaking up to Ambrose. Ambrose, you are doing well, I trust. I hope the news of your former sheriff joining the rebels was not overly troubling.
Not as troubling as other news I have received this year. You alerted me to your coming. What is your business in London, Ragna?
My business is my own. Am I not free to travel the Covenant cities as my fancy? Ambrose's chin raises and he looks her down. The irritation has not left him since you saw him. Where all has the Gauntlet positioned themselves for this? We'll start with Elenid.
Elenid, giving her rather unassuming clothing, is more trying to blend in with the crowd.
Alright. So you're packed in almost like a sardine with some of the neonates who don't immediately recognize who you are. They're very fixated on this meeting.
She has her cloak drawn around her, so the ring isn't immediately...
Even more, some people actually kind of shove you out of the way to get a better seat, as it were. And Cormac, where have you positioned yourself?
Cormac is not doing so much to blend in with the crowd. He is standing out where he can be seen, but out of the way, of course, so he's not seen as an obstruction.
And Robert.
Just standing in the typical spot court procedure would dictate for one of his standing. He will attempt to be more in the front, though.
You are front and prominent at one of the front pews, closest to Ambrose and Ragna. You could reach out and almost touch one of them. And Thomas.
Thomas stands out in a crowd, so he's gonna play on that, and be also down in front, though on the opposite side of the aisle from Robert, so as to not necessarily focus any attention in one particular spot.
All right. So you're a little bit farther away, but you still have a good vantage. After just a couple of moments of this irritation on Ambrose's face, he replies to Ragnar's quip.
And how long until you expect to quit the city?
A fortnight. 2 at the most. Worry not, Ambrose, I shall be gone enough. And you shall be rid of me. And she turns slowly to leave. And her entourage is about to follow when Ambrose's voice bellows out again.
Ragnar.
The entourage stops and turns quickly to face the prince, except for Ragnar, who remains faced away.
While you are in my city, you will address me as prince. You have not been dismissed.
She turns back, the hem of her skirt billowing about. Of course. Forgive me, Prince Ambrose. May I be dismissed? The two of them lock eyes. The court is silent. And as Ambrose opens his mouth to speak, the wooden double doors leading into the undercroft open once more, interrupting this meeting. They open to the sight of the Lincoln Prince, Jean-Marc de Martinique, followed by Sir Reynald Rouy. Jean-Marc steps in confidently, piercing the crowd in a black and gold doublet and hose, with a dark yellow cloak. And as he divides the crowd, he continues down the aisle flanking Ragna, until he is as close to her as Ambrose. He looks to you briefly, Robert, since you're so close as well, before he looks back to Ambrose.
I was informed evidence was being presented by the Gauntlet at this court by messenger of none other than Thomas Chamberlain. I thought it prudent to be here myself to hear it.
Many eyes fall on you, Thomas.
Thomas makes it a point to stand up straight and tall.
How timely your arrival is, Lord de Martinique. I believe you were invited by the Gauntlet Lord Chamberlain to answer for this.
And he withdraws from his doublet a parchment, the same parchment you saw him almost crush in his hands. What is everyone doing in this moment? Ellen, we'll start with you in the crowd with the neonates.
She is watching intently.
And Cormac.
Cormac is going to put on an air of defiance. He's not going to hide from de Martinique, despite what he's done. He'll cross his arms and glare.
And Robert.
Robert visibly tenses up and gives a worrying look towards Jean Marc. He says nothing, but his body language could be clear that he is worried what will happen next.
And Thomas.
Thomas quietly folds his hands at the small of his back, but he says nothing.
You possess the merchants of the staple and its vast resources by the death of the former Gauntlet Lord Gaetan de Corvo. Not only does your rule over the staple incriminate you in his death, and the death of the entire Gauntlet, your attempts at subterfuge to hide these documents further belie your guilt and malintent for its resources. How do you answer for this, Jean Marc?
Jean Marc's eyes are immense, and he is still as a statue, his head held high in defiance as well. He looks briefly towards you, Cormac, with anger, before returning to Ambrose. They also dart to Thomas in anger. He seems to be looking around.
I have been invited to be made a spectacle then, in front of these thin bloods and neonates even. Outrageous. This is a conspiracy. Gaetan's men are ransacked, and my invitation here have been a ploy to manifest my downfall. I will not answer for this without a full council of the Covenant present. You will not make me a spectacle to distract from your own failures as a prince. He spits at the ground, and as Jean Marc spits these words out, you can see his fangs are extended. And Ambrose now takes a step down from the dais toward the aisle, toward Jean Marc. Ragna's still between them. He glares at Jean Marc, stopping just short of Ragna, as she brings a hand up to his chest to stop him. Those eyes are stormy and fierce, as he shouts past Ragna to Jean Marc. Your betrayal is clear, and your guilt only strengthened by your evasion and deflection. The merchants of the staple will come under the charge of the whole of the Covenant for the safety of the realm. Your accounts shall be investigated by the Gauntlet for evidence of your misdeed. Your praxis over Lincoln is suspended. Jean Marc stares. Neither the Covenant nor the Gauntlet has any business meddling in the affairs of my personal ventures. I will not be subjected to such blatant exploitation and coercion. And you do not speak for the whole of the Covenant, Chevalier. You do not have the authority to do this. Ragna, what do you say on this?
He turns to look at her. Ragna, still holding Ambrose back, looks to Jean Marc. The evidence is quite damning, Jean Marc, and your hiding of this parcel is not encouraging. However, and her face turns to Ambrose, we must remain calm. The Council of the Covenant must convene to decide these things. At this point, the atmosphere is registered for everyone. I will take a perception alertness, difficulty 7 all around.
Would detail-oriented apply?
Absolutely. Got Thomas. Cormac. Robert. And
Apologies, what was difficulty again?
7. Jeez.
I don't notice anything.
Most of you don't notice anything. Cormac, you're caught off guard because someone shuffles next to you suddenly and it's so tense you look away. Elenid, you also had no successes and you're watching with intent at this very tense exchange. Robert, you as well don't notice anything. Thomas, 2 successes. You can see, you're noticing movements that are subtle. Cash's hand, the sheriff, he rests his hand on the hilt of his sword. Lydia is unlacing the neck of her cloak. Reynald is reaching to his sheathed saber. And the crowd of neonates is coalescing around the 3, their wide and hungry eyes staring from the darkness of the shadows in the columns like wolves and jackals. This is about to devolve into violence. Soon.
Thomas will speak up. Mercy, my lords and ladies.
Ambrose looks on the verge of frenzy. You can see he's pressing his weight against Ragnar's hand with just a shred of control. He looks to you briefly when you say this, and then calls to you and to the crowd. He refuses investigation. He will take his freedom, and he would use it to flee from his crimes and raise armies with his resources. Sheriff, seize Jean-Marc for questioning. He shouts this as he points to Jean-Marc. And now, weapons all around get drawn in a cacophony of metallic cries. Lydia having stepped up to Ragna and drawn her rapier. Sir Reynald has stepped in front of Jean-Marc with his saber drawn. And the sheriff, Cash, is coming down from the dais with his blade. What do you all do in the next few moments?
Well, Cormac, for his part, is going to move toward the neonates and try to get them out of there. This will not go well for them. Intimidating if he has to, but he's going to try leadership first.
Okay. I will take a charisma leadership roll, difficulty 8 from you.
Can Thomas get on?
Elenid had plans of doing that as well in case things went south. That was part of her reason she was in the...
Getting the neonates out.
Yep.
Difficulty what? 7?
8. Yes, you can all roll your charisma leadership.
Oh, good things you guys are getting in on that, because my dice suck tonight. And that is a botch.
Difficulty 7, you said?
8.
Oh, 8? Okay. Oh, well, does my merit apply for this?
Remind me your merit?
Enchanting voice.
I'm gonna say no in this case.
Okay.
Thomas, for his part, is also going to try and usher Regnus Childer out as well. Possibly catch them up in the melee of bodies. Quite intentional.
It's very difficult to move this crowd. Cormac, you don't have any success and actually get a few people more interested in trying to get their attention. You kind of added the excitement that someone's trying to do something right now. And they don't exactly listen to you, they kind of just focus more intently and circle around more. However, Elenid, Thomas, and Robert make good progress in at least getting the crowd to back up, as obviously this is getting more dangerous than the average court. And as Thomas, you go to try and usher the children away, Dorothy is quick to follow you and leaves with you. But the ghoul, Mr. Sharp, as well as her child Jesper, do not leave Ragnar's side, and Jesper has actually drawn his sword from his back as well. And I will say that those of you who did succeed on this, you don't sense fear from the neonates. You sense excitement. A hunger, even. You manage to get enough space just in time as Cash darts forward, moving with great speed. He moves almost imperceptibly quick. His sword comes out in a flurry of blows and crosses at Reynald, and the Undercroft echoes with the succession of metal clashing sounds ringing out as Sir Reynald parries each blow. He disarms Cash and sweeps him to the ground, deftly. Sir Reynald brings his foot and digs it into Cash's back as he raises the sword up for a coup de grace. What do each of you do in the next few moments? Elenid.
Elenid, after ushering them back, would separate herself from the crowd and look to the others within their group as to what actions they intend to take.
Robert, what are you doing in these few moments? You see that Cash has been defeated quickly.
Oh man. For now, Robert will... Where did you say Dorothy went?
Dorothy left with Thomas. She went to as far back as she would be guided. She wants no part of this and is back with the neonates, giving space. Kind of a large circle of space for this to unfold.
How many other neonates are fixed on this fight still?
They're all still watching. None have left. You succeeded in getting them to move back at least.
Okay, so there's no more neonates just crowding around the fight now.
Not feet away, maybe like 15 feet away now.
Okay. Robert will... He'll hang back and watch the fight progress as well.
Cormac, what do you do as you see this is devolved into violence now?
He will draw his blade, but he stands in front of the neon, not allowing them to pass if they try to do so. and perhaps a misguided attempt to protect them from this.
All right. And Thomas, what are you doing now that you've guided Dorothy back at least?
Thomas is going to call out to Lydia. Lydia, stop him, and draw his own blade to get between Ambrose, Ragna, and... Well, he's going to position himself so he's blocking Jean-Marc's ghoul from getting to them. But he's also very far away. Lydia's...
So you don't want to stop Sir Reynald from bringing the sword down on Cash. You just want to get
Well-
between Jean-Marc and Ragna and Ambrose.
Right, because Lydia's closer and she'll actually be able to do that. He's
get
too
a-
far away to make...
You get a look
Back.
from Lydia that looks grim. You don't get the impression she's moving from Ragna's side to stop this.
Well, then he will go and try and deflect the blade.
Alright, that's gonna be difficult.
He's very far away.
I'll give you a chance to make this. It's gonna be Dex Athletics difficulty 8 to pierce the crowd and get there fast enough to stop this.
And we all know how well my Dex Athletics weren't, though. However, lightning reflexes is a specialty I have.
That applies. Roll it out. Alright. You are gonna make it up in time. I just need a Dex melee from you. All you need is one success. This isn't gonna be an attack. He's not expecting to be deflected.
Yay, there's one in there, because lightning reflexes.
Oh, one success, barely. Just at the last second, the sword is coming down. It is aimed at the head. Sir Reynald's sword is being stabbed down in a stabbing motion, and you just come out of the crowd, out of the periphery, quick enough to bring your blade up, and it narrowly pierces the ground adjacent to Cash's head. You see, this would have run him through if you hadn't. And he looks to you quickly and withdraws the blade, holding it up against you defensively.
But no blood be shed. For whatever it's worth, Jean-Marc, I believe that you are as much a victim of this ploy as Gaetan was. And I have said as much to Prince Ambrose.
Ambrose, meanwhile, looks like a monster, fangs fully extended, as he yells out, "The Lincoln Prince would have my sheriff destroyed. He is an enemy of the Covenant. I invoke the Amaranth upon Jean-Marc de Martinique. Bring me his fangs!" The coalescing of Cainites around Jean-Marc that was held back by all of you is quickly moving beyond your control. They're moving in. Sir Reynald holds out a defensive blade as the predatory eyes of all these vampires surround Jean-Marc and Sir Reynald. He reaches out. Sir Reynald grabs one of these ensconced torches, ripping it off, and brandishes the torch to one side and the saber out. He sweeps it back and forth to keep the crowd at bay. What do each of you do? Elenid.
Not wanting her compatriot's head to be chopped off, considering he's currently one of the only ones on the front line, she will draw her blade from underneath her cloak and join him. Though it is a mostly defensive one, she is loath to outright attack.
Alright. Cormac, what do you do in the next few moments?
Cormac has given up on trying to restrain these neonates because they're just doing what their prince commands. But he's not going to get involved in this. He's going to circle the mess and see what the aftermath will be, unless he's forced to get involved.
And
Is Cash still down? Sorry.
No, you're fine. Cash is still on the ground. He's looking up. He looks a bit stunned, but he is getting up quickly.
I'm going to help him up then.
Yeah,
Okay.
so is Thomas. Thomas is right there, so he's also going to do.
Okay. So you
Defend
help
your
him
pri-
up. And he moves to grab his sword off the ground. And Robert, your grandsire has had the Amaranth called down upon him, and he is surrounded by all of these hungry neonates.
Well, he'll rush down there and try to just get everyone under his influence by using Majesty.
Alright. I will have you make a Dex Athletics, difficulty 8 as well, to get up to the area where you can get them looking at you and not him.
Okay. I'm sorry, I missed the difficulty.
8. You have to pierce the crowd now as well.
I'll spend the willpower.
Okay. Well, that was going to be a botch, but you spent a willpower. So you find the crowd is thick, and you are not able to get up to where you can get between anybody. So you don't quite get close enough to where you wanted to. But it seems perhaps you're not the only person who had this idea, as just as it seemed the two are being swarmed, the light and the air around Jean-Marc changes. A brilliance and power radiates from him, and you all suddenly feel this draw. However you were feeling about him, you've changed your mind. You sympathize more with Jean-Marc. Even if you already did, it seems even more obvious now, looking at him with awe. As does everyone else in the crowd. The neonates seem to back away and almost prostrate themselves. Even Ragna and Ambrose watch Jean-Marc with jaws agape. Does anyone try to do anything besides stare lovingly at Jean-Marc in this moment?
I'll say no.
Thomas also wouldn't.
Elenid, you are also captivated by this.
She would attempt to get her wits about her, but outside of that, she has no intention of attacking.
It's difficult to think of anything but serving Jean-Marc at this point. Robert, it seems that fortunately, the gifts you were about to employ are also gifts that Jean-Marc possesses. He speaks up at the height of his glowing aura. But what does Robert do in this moment?
Robert will watch Jean-Marc in awe, waiting for his every word.
Indeed, his words seem like truisms to all of you, as he speaks up to address this crowd now captivated by him.
I will not be assassinated here tonight, in character or in body. I am quitting London and retiring to Lincoln. With the exception of Lord De Vere, should any of you or any of the Covenant or Gauntlet attempt to breach the fief of Lincoln without my express permission and invitation, I shall assume it is an incursion and attempt on my own life, and I will see you meet the final death.
And as he finishes, he slowly backs down the aisle, his hand on Sir Reynold's shoulder, guiding him back as well. The two of them cautiously exit through the crowd, which parts for them like a sea. The brilliance and wonder of his figure slowly disappears behind the two wooden doors. And yet, there are several minutes where you are left in awe and silence, his words resonating in your mind, the feelings, the effects, very slowly retreat from your mind. Most of you continue watching the door. But after 4 or 5 minutes of this, you start to regain your senses, the inner dialogue. And it becomes increasingly apparent to you what you felt was unnatural and forced, obviously superimposed on you. You finally have the freedom to think even negatively about Jean-Marc again. Ambrose is first to break this silence.
Awaken, you fools! He has violated your minds with his powers. Search the city, man the walls. Domain and prestation to the one who brings me his fangs. Go and do not let him steal away.
The chamber empties of most. Cash, looking sheepish, grabs his sword and looks to you, Thomas, briefly, pensive and thoughtful look as he looks to you, as he moves off with them.
You're welcome.
Genevieve remains at the dais. Ragna and her entourage remain off to the side, leaving the group of you. Ambrose turns to you, each of you in turn.
What are you doing? You are the Gauntlet. He is an enemy of the Covenant.
Due respect, Your Grace. The Gauntlet serves the Covenant, not Prince Ambrose. I believe that you act rashly. And while he too behaved in a rash manner, calling for a blood hunt on a fellow Covenant prince does not suit you. Not outside of a full council meeting.
He snarls at you. That is no covenant, Prince. And you do not have the authority to determine when a council meeting is called.
You are quite correct. But you do.
As do I, Ragnar says, stepping back into the aisle. A meeting must be convened. For now, Jean-Marc must be given his space. I caution all to avoid Lincoln. She looks to each of you in turn. I shall see about messaging the remaining princes.
I regret that we did not see each other again under more pleasant circumstances, Your Grace.
She continues to move down the aisle. Jasper, Lydia, everyone following her, the remainder of her entourage. Ambrose spits on the ground, his fists clenched. He also moves to exit, Genevieve following after, with a worried look on her face. Leaving just the group of you there. And as you are left in the Undercroft alone, in the aftermath of this, the scene fades to black, and we will close out the session on that note. And we will pick it up again next week. So that happened.
Wowie wow.
Y'all did certainly do start a war.
I tried to stop it. It didn't go well, but I tried.
Yeah.
At least I stopped any actual bloodshed from happening.
That was impressive, actually.
That dumb luck moment.
Yeah. I fully expected, at a minimum, Cash was going down. I did not see him coming any further in this game. What are your thoughts, Scott?
I'd rather not share them right now. I suddenly find myself in rather foul mood.
Okay. Sarah, comments, considerations, questions?
Oh boy. He's gonna be given extra time in Lincoln to build his forces. Instead of just hunted down while he's on the return.
Happily, a certain individual amongst the Covenant princes has a substantial force she can call.
What do you think, Shadow?
Oh man. You want like an inner dialogue of my character or what?
Out of character, what did you think?
Okay. Out of character. Exciting stuff, you know. I hope that diplomacy is still an option. I'm thinking it may be with Devere. If he can somehow pull it off. Come to some agreeable, or at least he can deliver the council meeting message on peaceful terms.
Yep. You're the only person remaining in England that can still enter Lincoln without dying.
So yeah, that happened.
It did happen. I was entertained. And what's most entertaining is none of this would have been possible if all of you hadn't put it together.
Bam, bam,
Yes, if
bam.
only we flipped that coin and it landed on the other head.
Game changing drastically that I had never planned for.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that coin flip, we never would have gone to the manor anyway. And
That
we never
coin
would have
flip.
found those papers.
Sometimes it comes down to a coin flip. Let's do some entertaining role players before we get too late. We will start with Robert.
I think Thomas is a star today.
Cool. Thomas?
I want to give it to Cormac. He's kind of suffered a lot since last session. Much as I've been trying to mitigate that.
Definitely adding to this story for sure. And the drama. Cormac?
I'm gonna vote for Thomas tonight.
Okay. And Elenad.
I likewise am going to vote for Thomas because he did most of the things tonight.
It's true, he did a lot of things. Alright. 4 experience all around, because major events are transpiring that would not have happened at all without all of you working towards it. Whether you meant to or not. The game has been changed. Where will it go? Nobody knows. But I'm having fun, so I'm hoping you guys are having fun too.
Oh yes.
Alright. Well, I will be available to talk about stuff throughout the week, and we'll see you guys next week to pick it up.